So, Roland, the one last issue.
Okay.
Religion. We thought about discussing religion. Always hugely sensitive because people have such passions. I remember Tolstoy, reading that Tolstoy, the great, well, he was a great campaigner for non-violence, but Tolstoy, the Russian writer, used to say that the cruelest thing one man can say to another when it comes to religion is I am right and you are wrong, and it's hugely it's almost instantly confrontational when you talk about religion. But we're here in the Arab world. It's Eid al-Fitr, the great Eid at the end of Ramadan, great holiday, and religion. You have in the Middle East, of course, there are predominantly three great belief systems. Obviously Islam massively, and then to some extent Christianity and Judaism. The Abrahamic religions, the great established religions of the West. So what do you think?
Well, I think I'm reminded of what Noam Chomsky talked about when he was asked about religion. If a person goes to a religious meeting and gets inspired to help the homeless and do various other acts of kindness and mercy, he's not going to go and criticize and denigrate his own religion, even if it appears to be irrational.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I got involved with a Christian religious community. We lived together. We shared everything about community. And I was very young at the time, but I didn't realize the inherent failings of hierarchical apparatus of government that they had. And so there were abuses and corruption prevailed because it wasn't really democratic. If a person was higher than you in the hierarchical scheme of things, you were just no more than just a minion.
But isn't that life? I mean,
well, it shouldn't be that way, because I think all of us can contribute greatly. So I have more of an anarchistic attitude. I think Jesus was more anarchistic in his attitude and got into serious trouble with religious figures who were very, very conservative and very much into the power structure and preserving their own self-interest. And there's a lot of that today in all organised religion I've seen. You have an incredible amount of resources dedicated towards building projects. I think actually I remember reading back in the 90s, Newsweek, they had an article, where did the money go in US churches? And they had it broken down to I think about 90% went towards building funds, projects, various other investments. Sure. About 9% went towards the wages of those who supposedly served, and 1% went towards supposed overseas missions. But then, shock and horror, that was divided in the same way in the overseas thing. And so you can understand why people are extremely skeptical of organised religion. But there are very, very sincere people who take seriously the teachings in whatever religion they're in, and they do very well. They do very well in terms of moral development, in making serious changes, and they're the ones that speak out when they see corruption. They do an awful lot.
So you'd argue for religion without mosques and churches and synagogues?
Well, we don't need visible structures. I don't think we need them, especially when people are going without. Now, if all things were level and we all had a decent standard of living, and I'm talking about the 7 billion people on this planet, decent drinking and water and health and everything. It's just a decent standard. Okay, if you want to have a nice church or building or whatever, we can do that because nobody's suffering.
But we do need to congregate, don't we? We do need to assemble, or at least to share our ideas with one another. There is this concept of community.
Yes, I know. But like I said, but a number of these structures, especially in the West, I don't know too much about what's happening in the Middle East, were built at the expense of poor folk. And so sometimes when I look at this massive cathedral, I say, how many people died in the making of this? How many people were
it's the the
rich
trying to pay for their way into the kingdom of heaven.
This is this is the misalignment. This is wrong. And so I think we're talking about the essence of religion is about mercy and understanding, fairness, loving one another. this is not loving one another when we're using that as a pretext to justify.
Yeah.
It cannot. There's no moral basis whatsoever.
But would you describe yourself as a Christian?
Well, yeah, I think I'm a Christian in some ways, but I also get inspired by philosophers, academics, journalists, all kinds of people. I get so much inspiration from all kinds of people.
Yes.
I mean, I did get a significant impacting by the teaching of Christ. But he said, we'll go on to do greater things. And I think that can happen when people are open to truth from coming from all directions, and people who are not loyal to organizations but more loyal to principles and truth itself.
So I think that's, yes, true Christianity, true Islam. The Prophet Muhammad once said that anybody from whose hand and lips the world is safe is a Muslim, which is a beautiful definition of Muslim. And perhaps that's all we need is not to hurt one another and to treat each other as it's the golden rule, isn't it? Do as you would be done by.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think where does that happen today? Because for example, the early Christians used to live together. They shared everything they had. The idea of meeting. And that was a fantastic experiment, but they were pretty much exterminated by the mainstream, because that was you can't do that because they're no longer interested in buying lots of shiny trinkets. Why aren't they joining the army? We can't have that. They're not loyal to our system. We can't. This is not good. So they had to devise a way and create a religion, Catholic or whatever institution, because that was the last remaining Roman institution, and pretend to be the real thing. Obviously, there are very sincere people in it, for example, who are doing their utmost to make a serious difference. But the institution is rotten. It has a serious history of pedophilia.
Though all institutions are rotten in some way. I mean, it's in the nature of institutions, isn't it? They end up with their flaws, whether you're talking about the church or parliament or even the press, in terms of the big monopoly.
Well, it goes back to accountability.
Yeah.
And you have certain people who have elevated states of exceptionalism, and they become untouchable. The weighty members, in the Quakers, the weighty Quakers. You can't criticise them because they were the founders. Oh, right, okay, they're from that particular family. And it's this kind of phenomena is existent in organised religion. And that's why it's tolerated by the state. One of the major reasons, because then it means that they can control the people, because there's this culture where people are dependent to follow the leadership.
I think that was true in the past. I think less so now, at least in the West. The power of structured and organised religion is perhaps weaker. I would argue that it's rather, most religious leaders are a disappointment now in the West, because they don't take major stands on issues, and they are rather vapid, empty figures that are no longer taking a lead. I'd like to see them take a little more of a lead.
Well, absolutely, but I think that one of the major reasons is that because the whole system is flawed, it's an institution and you have leadership and hierarchies, they don't teach serious critical thinking and honesty or encourage that amongst the people. Hardly any of that is taught in the schools today, exception of a few where you've got excellent debating teams, etc., as long as they debate on the right subjects, that kind of thing. But it's just, I think the answer lies within us as individuals, where we become a lot more critically aware and conscientious. And I think we're old enough, or we're mature, that we can make decisions, we conclude. We don't need somebody to tell us how to think or what to do. They can suggest things, but we need to analyse it and say, well, wait a minute, is there merit in it?
And build our own relationship with God.
Exactly. And do we really need to spend obscene amounts of money on this building? Why don't we concentrate on the housing of all of us, and then we can meet in houses or whatever it may be.
So you would believe in a religion without a priesthood, without imams, without you would believe.
It's very interesting. I do believe in the greatest person. I mean, Jesus. To quote Jesus, he said, "The greatest person will be among you as a servant, as a child." And he spoke very straight. Don't lord it over anyone. Now, why on earth did I miss that many years ago when I was in this religion? I was lording over people. I was being lorded at. It's terrible. I was a tyrant at times. And the worst things, the worst attributes come out. And it's like when we began the conversation, you were saying that the most dangerous thing that Tolstoy said is, I'm right and you're wrong. This kind of horrible polarization, fundamentalism, which is scary. And religious people are supposed to be the sample of the world. They're supposed to show the way out of this horrible morass. Well, with that kind of behaviour, it's no wonder why most intelligent people run the other way. Until they see genuine examples of intelligence brimming and enthusiasm and love and understanding and compassion, it's very difficult for them to want to see. They just see this whole history, this horrible history of abuse and stupidity coming from a lot of organised religious situations.
Well, let's hope for a better world.
Yes.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you very much for sharing those thoughts with us. Okay, bless your heart.
Thank you very much.